Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Apolonia Rockwell Show. Guys, I have such an inspiring, incredible guest. We have Dr. Stevie Dawn Carter with us. She is a powerhouse. Not only is she gorgeous, she's beautiful, but she's so inspiring in other places, in all areas of life. Stevie Dawn Carter, she's an emotional intelligence specialist, which I'm so excited to ask you so many questions around there. She is the CEO of Empathix, and she is in charge of developing curriculum, training facilitators, and facilitating programs in communication and leadership while specializing in emotional intelligence. Stevie, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I have to tell you, at the time of this recording, I am starting my birthday weekend celebration. So I am fabulous today. I'm not wearing the tiara because I felt like maybe that would have a whole different take on it. So I'm not wearing it, but I have it in the other room ready to go. As soon as I jump off this call, celebration starts. So I'm good.
Celebration. So happy early birthday weekend. I'm honored then to kick off your weekend with a conversation about you, because I was telling Stevie this off air, is that when I'm doing my research on you, and you're clearly a specialist in emotional intelligence. And what that means to me is that's an area of all of our lives that we can all grow in. And that includes every bucket of our life. Like doing my research on you, I'm like, this doesn't just apply in the workplace. This doesn't just apply as a business owner. This applies as a mother, as a daughter, as a sister, as a friend. Do you see that often? Do you see that your tools apply in people's lives across the board?
I do. Yeah, it's such a great point. I think, the entrance point as a business owner is to corporations and through culture work. Mm-hmm. But the actual truth is, for most people who utilize the training and what we teach, I get comments like, this saved my marriage.
Yeah.
Or this is going to help me with my teenage daughter.
Yep.
And so while we put it in the context of work, I know in my life, I use these tools all the time in daily life, and that has nothing to do with work. I mean, this is how I have a solid relationship with my husband, is because I use emotional intelligence. Absolutely. So, I think it does apply everywhere to every facet of our life.
That's what I was imagining. Exactly what you just mentioned is you doing training with these corporations, and the feedback. I was imagining the feedback and thank yous that you get, those emails or letters that you get in is like, thank you. I got a promotion. I was able to, lead more effectively at work, but also this saved my marriage. Also, I restored the friendship, the 20-year friendship that was, broken, and you helped me there. And so can you just tell everyone, really starting at the basics, like what is emotional intelligence and why is that even important for us to be considering in our own lives? And how does that apply to the relationships we have in our lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So emotional intelligence really comes down to two things for me. Number one, it's about managing our emotions so that we don't make decisions based purely on emotion, that we make sure that our emotions don't run away with us, as it were. And we've all been in situations where that happens. So we know what that is, right? Yes. So part of emotional intelligence is the self and making sure we're managing correctly. Okay. The second part, though, and this is the part that I think people don't always focus on, is being more emotionally intelligent says, when I listen to other people, I'm going to make sure I listen with their intention and not my emotion. And those are two very, very different things. And the example I always give is, a classic married couple years into their marriage. And the wife says, "Oh, how do I look?" And he says, "You look great." But she hears, You look fat. It doesn't look as good as it did yesterday. Da, da, da. Right? Those are her emotions interpreting what he said.
Yes.
And so she turns around and says, you don't mean that. You're just lying.
Yes.
No, his intention was you look great. You're reading that through your emotions. And so the second part of emotional intelligence is really making sure that when we communicate with each other, that we're not only communicating free of emotion, but we're listening free of emotion. And I think that's a key component that we don't talk about enough.
I'm taking what you just said and applying it to, again, all areas of life. And some of the things that, like the first scenario I think about is sometimes like listening to my mom when she shares stories. And I'm thinking that I'm a problem solver. Like I feel like I'm a default to, you know, if she's sharing to me stories about work, or if she's sharing, I'm thinking, well, here's how to solve, and I'm so quick to, you know, think that I'm a problem solver. Let me solve. And so when you just mentioned all that, I'm thinking, man, maybe I can have better listening skills by asking more questions. Or tell me this, Stevie, is it important when someone is trying to have a deep conversation with us, are we supposed to first ask them, are you wanting solutions here? Are you wanting me to listen? Or, you know, how can we set ourselves up to be a better listener?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And I think I look at it as we kind of have two opportunities, right? So number one, if you're the person speaking, you have the ability to say, hey, I'd really just love to vent to you right now.
Okay.
I don't really need advice. I don't really need you to solve it. I just want to get it out. Let me tell you that 99% of the time, that's actually what people want. 99% of the time.
It's just to vent. Is that what you're saying? To vent?
To just vent. They just want to be seen and heard. They just want to get what they're feeling out so that it's no longer in their body. It's out in the universe and it kind of can dissipate and fly all around the place and it feels better.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
But if we're listening and they haven't said that, right? They didn't say that. I think it's always good to ask a question such as, are you looking for feedback?
Okay.
Or are you looking for support? Those are two different things, right? Are you looking for feedback? Or are you looking for support? Because again, 99% of the time, people really are just looking for support.
Wow.
They really just want you to say, yeah, that sucks.
Validate my feelings.
Right? But yet, so often what we give is unsolicited feedback or unsolicited advice. And really, and this is the key point, I think if you can make the switch in your brain, this will last as a habit for you. And that is this. When you enter into those conversations and things start happening, ask yourself, am I making it about me?
Oh my goodness.
Because the minute you start sharing your story, your advice, your example, you've just taken their emotional distress and you've said, I'm more important. And once you think about it like that, you will stop doing it because it's never how you feel. You never want to be that person. But that is kind of what we all do as humans, is we want to share ourselves to try and connect.
Yes.
But in order to connect, all you need to do is listen. You don't have to share to connect. Listening is connection. That's it.
Rewind that on the podcast. Hit the back 10-second button a few times, because I've never heard you say it. I've never heard you explain it as simple as you just did there. Is that as humans, we tend to make it about ourselves as a form to connect.
Yeah.
But that you don't need to.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember it comes from a good place. I'm trying to connect to them. I'm trying to make sure they know they're not alone.
Yes. Yes.
But in doing so, did you just make it about you? And them feeling not alone was probably you just going, wow, that really sucks. I am sorry you're going through it. They're not alone. Just make that comment. It's one easy sentence. You know, I talk all the time about, we have made empathy this big thing where we need to reflect back what they say and then attach it to our own personal life experience so that we can walk a mile in their shoes, all these things.
Yes, yes.
And that's all, it's beautiful, right? It's beautiful, it's human, it's gorgeous. But at the end of the day, for most people, all they want to hear is, I'm sorry you're going through that. How can I support you? That's it.
And
That's all they want.
And zip it. Because
zip it. Listen, right? Because listening is connection. And that's the thing that I think I probably will have written on my tombstone when I die is listening is the connection. Just listen.
Just listening is the connection. That's the most beautiful, simple thing I've ever heard. I think that that's so impactful. And I keep going back to employer-employee relationships, strengthening. This is why I'm so excited to talk to you. To be, so honest, I value communication, effective communication, and growing in this area because it's something that I struggle the most with. And your relationships in your lives, if you're not looking to grow and strengthen them, I'm thinking, what are you doing? I mean, this is all of us, I feel like, are not 100% there yet. I feel like we can all strengthen, deepen those family relationships. I always think back to that, like, when's the last time, just rereading your work and again, doing our research about you, I was really prompted to self-reflect and think, when's the last time I reached out to my brother? And something as simple as that, and how just asking him how he's doing, the little things like that. So tell me this. So when businesses hire you to come do a seminar or, maybe it's a leadership meeting, what's the most common problems that an organization is facing? I'm sure it goes deeper than just, we're not communicating well. Like, what are they, what do they come to you? Dr. Stevie, we're needing your help. What are those and how can you solve those things?
If I had $1 for every time somebody said, Stevie, we have difficult employees, we have difficult people, I would be a millionaire, like literally. I should charge for the word. So that really is the number one thing. And I think I was actually doing, we have this online course that we offer, and every quarter we do these refresher trainings where I get everybody in a room together and we kind of talk about, how is this working for you now, now that you're using it. So we were talking today about this idea of difficult employees, right? And that this is a phrase that people use. And, I was sitting there thinking as we were talking, people were talking at their tables, talking about it. And I said, at the end of the day, is it that the person is difficult, or is it that you have difficulty communicating with them?
Everyone's minds in the room. Let me guess. Everyone explodes.
Everybody just kind of stopped and went. And then, of course, one person, right, being that human in the room that needs to say something, goes, no, Stevie, they're really difficult. And I said, I get it. People rub us the wrong way. They don't do things the way we think they should be done. I get it. We all encounter people like that. But if I actually ask you to reflect on it, the struggle you have is that when you're trying to communicate, you feel like it's not working. That's what makes them difficult. Okay, them by themselves as a human may be 100% fine. Like if you were to meet them in the grocery store, you may not have an issue with them at all. Yes. But you have an issue because you're trying to communicate and it's not working in that way, right? So that's the number one thing that I get asked to fix. And I always start with the same thing, which is number one, we have to learn how to talk to each other in different ways. We kind of think our way is the only way, right? So we should probably learn some different ways. But number two, we got to start giving each other some grace for our listening abilities, right? We are not great listeners. And so if we're not great listeners, they are also not great listeners. So I feel like we all need to give each other grace for this. And there's some statistics out there because I think you'll really be interested in this. So Here's the thing. 2 people alone in a room face to face. Neither person is on their phone. Neither person is distracted by a computer. Like literally there's nothing else to do in this room except sit face to face and have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty great, right?
Yep.
5 out of every 7 words is what somebody will hear. 5 out of every 7 words. That's pretty good. If we really think about it, that's not bad.
Right? Still good to know.
So good. That's the best we can hope for. 5 out of 7. So let's talk about other types of conversations. Let's say you're on the phone with somebody.
Right.
It's 4 out of 7. Let's say you're on a Zoom call, some kind of web video conference. It's 3 out of 7.
Oh my gosh, you're killing everyone right now.
You're in a group environment. It's 3 out of 7. Oh, by the way, email, we statistically read 3 out of every 7 words in an email. So, right, this is biology. This is not because people are not listening to you.
Right.
This is just how our brains work. Our brains are really busy. They do not hold on to every person's word. And so if you know that and you take that in, to me, what that means is, well, gosh, I got to give people some credit then.
Right.
When we have a conversation and they don't get what I was saying perfectly. Because I probably also didn't get what they were saying perfectly.
Oh, that's such a great way to frame it.
Right. So why don't we give each other some grace about our listening? And instead of, a lot of times, again, when people say difficult employee, they'll say, well, they don't listen to me.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, let's take that back. They probably listen to you as well as you listen to them.
That's so powerful. That's so, I love how you said just knowing.
Yeah.
Like, and I love podcasts that there are bombs dropped right there, facts that you could take in and absorb right then and there that change your life forever. Because how can you live your life the same after listening to this conversation with you and I, and live it any differently with knowing that statistic? I love how you just said, oh, we're so default to say, oh, they're not listening to me, but we were probably listening to them just as much as they were listening to us. That's powerful information.
It is. And I think, so much of, I always tell people, the stuff I teach is it's not rocket science and it's not new. This is how people have been communicating for hundreds of thousands of years. Like since the first people started communicating, these are all the same issues. We haven't solved them, right? So my thing is, can I do little things myself to try and make it a little better? That's all I'm trying to do. Little things myself. And so I always tell people, when you listen to things, you listen to a podcast, you attend a webinar, you go to a conference, whatever it is, you got to kind of look at that and say, okay, I'm not going to change every single behavior that's wrong all at once. We're not designed to do that. But can I do one little thing? Can I just do one little thing different, right? Like one of the things I have an employee who she's an interrupter, right? She is somebody who she gets an idea and she needs to tell it to you right then and there, whether you were done talking or not. And she means it, right? It comes from a good place. It's a good heart. She's a positive human. Again, nothing that is wrong with her.
Yeah.
But this is who she is. And so one of the little things I told her once is I said, you know what? Could you just count to 3 in your head? Just when you have that idea, just go, even if you kind of nod your head along while you're counting, right? So you kind of know that you're doing it, and then say it. I said, you'd be amazed that in that 3 seconds, that person probably finished their sentence and now you didn't interrupt. And it was just 3. It was just a count of 3. That's all you did different. She did that differently. And so many people commented about how collaborative she was.
Oh my goodness.
And all she did was count. That's the only change she made. So little things make huge differences, right? So little change, she just counts to 3 before she talks now. Does she still sometimes interrupt people? Of course she does. But she does it a lot less. And people appreciate, those that speak with her regularly appreciate the change.
Yes.
So just find a little thing. Just find a little thing you can do, and you'd be amazed at how your life can shift.
Was that the first time she had heard that? were you the
Yes.
first person to gift her that advice?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I talked to her because, I mean, obviously we teach this stuff. Right?
Yes.
So like to a certain extent, we kind of all feel like we should all be better, right? Because we do this every day.
Yeah.
But do as I say, not as I do,
Yeah.
always. So when I had this conversation, I said, I kind of feel like you interrupt a lot. And she goes, do I? Like she really didn't get it, right? And so we talked a little bit about some self-awareness and thinking about it and all those things. And so when I was like, you could just do the 3-second rule. You could just, hold for 3 seconds before you speak. And she goes, people have told me a lot to wait or to pause.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, but I've never heard somebody say, just count to 3.
And see
so for whatever it was that I said in terms of count to 3 was what made it different for her.
It clicked.
Right? Like I'm sure people had told her before, like, hey, you interrupt people, or hey, you should pause, think before you speak, right? That's a famous one. Think before you speak. Really what we mean when we say that is just stop talking for a little bit and then talk after. That's really all we're saying when we say think before you speak. Just wait on it. Just an extra couple seconds. You'd be amazed how your brain will catch up and then go, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that because you thought about it.
Because you thought about it, and the comments she was getting of, or, all the great feedback people had noticed, is it because people felt heard for once? They just want to feel heard.
She didn't steamroll over them. Yeah. She allowed them their space to talk. So they felt amazing. She was great. One little change.
Little change. I'm fascinated by the topic that you mentioned of the number one question that you get asked most are difficult employees. So I want to dive deeper into that. So when you're mentioning that, the statistics that we're not even great listeners ourselves, and that's a one-on-one, throwing a phone in somebody's hand. It's like, gosh, they only heard half the things I said and vice versa. So I would imagine that maybe some tools, some action items, including myself from after this podcast, does that, some of the advice that you give regarding those conversations is when we speak to people, we're talking about instructions, we're talking about, next steps after a meeting. Are you saying face-to-face is great? Always follow that up in an email and make sure that it's laid out. And then after the email, send them another email to make sure you're really like, what do you do if we're not consuming what we're hearing? How do we amp up that effective communication?
No, it's a great question. So, number one, face-to-face is the best form of communication. So if you have the ability to have a face-to-face, I always say if the conversation is worth it, right? So sometimes it's hey, can you get this to me by Friday? That's not a conversation that's probably worth it. Okay. But if there's a conversation that's worth it, try and have the conversation face to face. It will just go better. So anytime you're doing feedback or having to have some kind of emotional or hard conversation, I always say, try and have it face to face because they get more words. Okay. But yes, to your point, if you do have a conversation face to face, don't let that be the only time they hear the information. And that is true for everybody. So if you have a team meeting and everybody around the table nodded their head and said, yep, we got it, boss. Still send an email because half of them did not get it. They were just lying and saying what they always know to say, right? Like it's a false positive. So send the email. Like you said, send an email follow-up that says, hey, just reminding us all, this is what we talked about. Okay. That's it. Right. If you are just actively having a conversation, one of the things to think about is if there's a process or a structure that you take people through regularly, right? So for me, I've got like the sales process, right? For my own business, here's my sales process. These are the questions I ask, right? That's a process. If you have any kind of process or set conversation that you have a lot, I encourage people to take that conversation and ask yourself how to make it say the same thing 3 different ways.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Right. So that then within the conversation, you can bring it back again in a different way and make sure they heard it. Right. Whereas what a lot of us do is we just repeat ourselves. And repeating yourself can be helpful. Saying the same thing multiple times is sometimes okay. Right? I use it a lot in a teaching scenario. As a teacher, I can say, okay, again, for the people in the back, here's what I need to say, right?
Yeah.
But in a one-on-one conversation, that doesn't always work well. So we need to think about things that we say often. Do you have 2 or 3 different ways to say it? Okay. So that in those conversations, you can change it up and make sure that they get it. Because if you're only saying it the one way you've always practiced, you're probably missing 50 to 60% of the people.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So how do you shift that around, right? So that's a practice or a strategy that you can do. The other thing that really makes for effective communication, and it's simple, it's not easy, right? So I always like to say, I try and give a lot of simple strategies. That doesn't mean they're easy. Okay. Is in your conversation with somebody, are you matching how they're talking?
Tone-wise, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So it's tone, volume, speed, energy, passion, and nonverbal cues.
Oh my goodness. What do you mean by that? My mind just went to, I'm naturally a highly energetic person. I speak quick and loud, and I have a lot of people on my team that are mellow. Are you saying, I'm going to be your student right now? I need to tone it down? Bottle up that energy. And
so here's the thing. Like look at energy as a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. So if I were to ask you right now, today, in this moment, no thought behind it, scale of 1 to 10, how much energy, how are you feeling today? 10 being awesome, 1 being
8, 9.
8, 9. Great. Okay. So what I want you to do is take that number and hold on to it. Now, the person sitting across from you, right? So pick somebody on your team you know is more mellow. What number would they give you right now?
About themselves or about me?
About themselves. What would they say?
I'm a 5.
Okay. So here's the thing. If that difference is any more than 2 numbers, you need to make a change.
In order for them to feel like they are feeling heard,
in order for them to receive the information you're delivering.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
And they're at a 5, you're talking at an energy level and at a pace that a 5 can't hear.
You just changed my life. You just changed my life. I am seriously your student. This is a mastermind session and everyone gets to listen in on it, because for a small team, I feel like, and I know you hear this from your clients all the time, corporate, medium-sized, small business. Gosh, we are having communication breakdowns, Stevie. Like we're small. We have less than, 20 employees. We have 15 employees. How will we have this communication breakdown? And you're you have given me already, and the listeners that just get to listen, so much strategy here. Okay. I'm taking this in. I need to match their energy in order for both of us to feel heard and to consume.
To get the information, right? So I always say if it's more than a 2-point difference, you need to shift. And we always shift. Here's the difference. You always shift to the lowest person.
To them.
Right? The lowest feeling person is a better way to say that. Right? So if somebody comes in and they're feeling a 3, right? They're not having a good day. Things are rough for them. They will not be able to keep up with the conversation level of a 10. There's just too much difference. And so the 10 needs to come down to like a 5. And then the 3 can more keep up with them. So, and where you can really see this is if you do like a group setting, like you have your team together, you have a team meeting, and you've got a couple people who are like high energy in it. And then you've got a couple people a little more low. Or like in my case, when I have my team meeting, I have one person who our team meeting is at the time she typically wakes up. Right. So like she only gets up earlier on that one day a week for our team meeting. And I know she does that for us and I appreciate it because she's my marketing manager and she can do her stuff any time of the day. So I allow her that flexibility, but you got to come to the team meeting and the team meeting happens at 9 a.m. And that's not when she's awake, right? So she comes into the meeting dragging, right?
Totally.
But I still need her to get the content. But if I'm a 10, she is not getting it.
Oh, that's
and
so
it seems
good.
there is such a thing as toxic positivity.
I agree.
If
Tell me
you
more
are-
about that.
Yeah. So if you are so positive
Mm-hmm.
that it is off-putting to people
Mhm.
because they are not at that same level,
Mm-hmm.
they will stop listening to you. Because they just can't, they're like, oh, she just needs to calm down. I can't take it in.
I can't.
Right. And so if you're that positive and that upbeat all the time, it can become toxic to the people in your circle that aren't that.
Mm-hmm.
So I engage my leaders. When I'm on stage, I'm a 10.
Right.
Like when I'm speaking, I'm a 10. I go all out, right? Absolutely. As you should, right?
Right.
When I'm having small group discussions, right? So it's just me and my team, or it's one-on-one, or it's a couple of us working on a specific client, right? Anytime it's larger than a speaking engagement, right? When it's smaller than a speaking engagement, I always say the highest I should be is an 8.
Oh, wow.
I should never be at 10 because my volume, my speed, my intensity will not work well in a small group. It will be overpowering.
Yes.
It will be overbearing, and people will struggle to keep up unless they're in that exact same place that I'm in.
Wow. Oh,
so
man.
It really is something that you have to think about, because those of us that are business owners, those of us that are the quote unquote face of our company, we do a lot where we put ourselves out there. And when you put yourselves out there, you need to be that high energy, right? When I train speakers, I'm like, you need to learn how to be a 10, even when you're feeling a 2, because that has to happen as a speaker.
Yeah.
But in those more intimate settings, and especially if you're a leader, you've got to keep it lower. So I always say, as a leader, 5 to 8 is your sweet spot. Try not to be below a 5. Try not to be above an 8. If you're somewhere in the 5 to 8 range as a leader, they will hear you. And that's really what we want, right? Because it doesn't matter what I say. It only matters what they hear.
Oh, that's great.
I need them to hear me.
You have changed so many people's lives already that I'm thinking, how many more questions can I fit into how much time we have left? Because I know we're running already, towards the end. And I'm like, I could talk to you all day, Stevie, because I love how you mentioned, as leaders, as the face of the business, I am normally a level 8. And when I'm like out there doing a presentation, I'm a level 10. Yeah. But, it's so interesting that you've just mentioned that matching someone's energy is going to change your life, to feel heard, to have that person on the receiving end to feel heard. Because I've noticed people on my team, they are just, hey, even a girlfriend or a family member, I'm very optimistic by nature. And I have realized there's a lot of more pessimistic type of natural thinking. And I've realized this last year, I need to tone it down a little bit, because my team, like when I'm speaking to a team member who is very analytical, and I appreciate that about them. They're very analytical. I don't want to talk to someone like me. I don't want someone to be a big think, miss all the details, because I probably wouldn't like to work around someone like me who's not detail oriented. So I appreciate this team member that I'm referring to, thinking of, who's very analytical, very slower pace. And when I realized this last year, when I start talking about big things, that really, I love how you mentioned that, will turn off that person completely. Because when I start talking about big dreams as an entrepreneur, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, this could go wrong. Like, our current book of business is this, like what? So I've realized maybe I don't need to share all those things. Do you tell leaders that, like the entrepreneur, big vision person, like, I
think there's there's a misunderstanding in the kind of world of work that, like, there's a thing that says leaders should cast a vision.
Okay.
right? Leaders should be the one that casts the vision for your company, vision for your team, vision for your department, whatever it is, whatever you lead, you cast that vision. And then you're supposed to get everybody on board, get everybody into that vision.
I've heard
The
that.
actual truth is, it's only your vision. Nobody else is really going to get it. Nobody else is going to feel as passionately as you do about it. And if you're expecting them to, you're just going to be disappointed.
Absolutely.
So what you really need to do is you need to cast your vision, and then you need to give them goals that matter to them, that are aligned with that vision, that get us closer to that vision, but they don't need to care about the vision. You cannot make other people care emotionally about things that you care about. That is just not how the world works, right? We see that on social media all the time, right? Hey, care about this with me. And people are like, I don't care about that.
That's not my dream. Yeah.
But we do that a lot with our teams. And I see it especially with entrepreneurs. So myself included, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years.
Yeah.
I want my team to want it the way I want it.
And that's just.
But at the end of the day, it's my business. They'll go work somewhere else.
Right.
Like it's not theirs, right? They cannot possibly want it emotionally the way I do. So what I've started doing is I still share, like, this is where we're going, people. And I'm really excited. But then I also go, okay, but here's what that means for you.
Okay.
Right? In your role, in your work, here's the goals for this year. And they'll get us closer to my big thing. But we don't need to keep talking about my big thing, because that isn't what you want. And that's not where you're at. So let me not put that on you. Yeah, right. And there's this idea of we put emotional expectations on others.
Yeah.
We expect them to react emotionally the way we would. And that makes sense in our brain, and that's okay. But the truth is, nobody has the same emotional reaction that you will have. Even people who you feel are like on your team and support you, they're still not going to have the same emotional reaction. So don't put yourself out there to put something out there that you really want them to emotionally react to, because they're not going to do it. And then you're going to feel bad about it. And that doesn't feel good either. So take that emotional expectation out. Know that your big vision is just yours, and you can share it, but never expect them to get it. And when you just take that expectation out, I don't expect them to get it. I don't expect them to be excited. When you just take all that expectation out, all of a sudden it's just, hey, I'm sharing my vision. It's great. This is what I want. Here's the goals I need you to accomplish to get me there. That's what we're at. And it just becomes so much more logical and less emotional. And that's what we have to be. And as founders, we're terrible because we thrive in emotion.
Yeah, you're right.
And they don't. They're employees. They don't thrive in emotion. And to your point, you wouldn't want them to, because then they wouldn't be the great employee you want them to be.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that as founders, we sit alone in that space of emotion, and we don't want that from them. So find the space in yourself to say, I'm good with me believing in my goal. I just need them to get it done.
Does that, when I hear you saying don't place emotional expectations on other people, my mind just went to that applies with family life. Is it the same? Is it? Yeah. I feel like I can sense the energy already from you, that you have like this flag in your room that says, I'm not a victim. Because here's where my mind, let me back it up why I say that. I feel like you have such a non-victim mentality, because when I hear you saying, don't put emotional expectations on people, my mind went to, when you're sharing like personal goals and dreams with like your spouse or to your mom or to your girlfriends, and they're not all jumping up and down for you, you're saying you shouldn't have a pity party, because you are expecting everyone to get all excited for your personal stuff. And maybe like, that's just not realistic for us.
It's not realistic. It's not. No, it's so, so true. So yes. So like my husband and I are perfect example of this. He is my biggest cheerleader, my biggest supporter. I'm blessed beyond belief to have a prince such as him in my life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He will never be as excited for my business and my goals as I am.
And you're saying that's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah. How about we not be mad at them for it?
Yeah.
How about we just allow, I'm like, hey, can I talk to you about it? He's like, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I tell him, and Here's the thing you got to never ask. And this is the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing. Don't ask, what do you think? Just don't do it, because they're going to tell you, and it's not going to be what you want to hear. And it's just going to make you plummet into self-despair and horrible negativity. You don't do it. So what I do is I share and I go, and this is it. Thanks for hearing me out. Thanks for listening. Thanks for letting me share that. I don't ask for feedback because they're not going to give me the feedback I truly want.
Absolutely.
So it's just best to not. Now, if I'm open to changing what I'm thinking, then I might say, hey, so what are your opinions? What do you think about that?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Only if I'm open to it. If I've already made the decision and decided, do not ask a question you do not want the answer to.
I love
like
that.
That is the biggest thing that we do wrong is we say, so what do you think? Oh, it's terrible. We should outlaw the phrase.
I love that, because you're right. That is like the start of a snowball to a fight with a spouse, with a girl, with the girls.
Anybody.
And you're like,
with your family, your parents. Yeah. Oh gosh, it's anybody. And it always leads to a fight. It never comes out well. And at the end of the fight, you'll look back and you'll go, if I had just not asked that question, it would have been fine.
Because like you said, you already probably came up to the conclusion or the solution that you have. You just wanted to share that this had happened. And thank you for listening. I just wanted to share that.
I just wanted to share that. Okay, bye. See you later. Like, let's go make dinner. Like, just, it has to be, if you continuously open yourself up to allow people to give you feedback, you have to be okay with the fact that most of it will never agree with you. That's why it's feedback.
Okay. That's
like that. That's what it's there for. So if you're open to change, ask for feedback. If you're literally not open to change, it's just going to cause a fight. Don't ask for it.
Yes. I love that. And all right, here's where I want to, I'm looking at time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just chatted your ears off, and I want to respect the time frame that you gave me. So here's how I want to end it, is asking you for some, you've given this is a podcast I'm going to listen to for myself, because this is so powerful advice to strengthen your relationships across the board. Here's my question is, what advice do you have kind of alongside that? What about that difficult employee? My question is strategies for difficult conversations. And maybe that is within a difficult, quote unquote, difficult employee, which we've debunked that myth anyways. Maybe this is with a family member, a spouse, an employee. What's some advice to have effective, difficult conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 3-step process. Every time you have a conversation, whether it's difficult or easy, it doesn't matter. Same 3 rules apply. So first off, assess your own emotion and energy.
Okay.
Right? Because you're going to take that into the room with you for whatever this conversation is. So if you're already feeling bad, if you're dreading it, understand that you're coming in with that emotion. Just understanding it and being aware of it allows you to kind of put it to the side and maybe work around it, but you got to be aware of it. So number 1, assess yourself. Where are you at? How are you feeling? Right? And how are you going to make sure that doesn't interfere with this conversation?
Okay.
Number 2 is you got to actually plan the conversation. So many of us don't practice before we perform.
That's me. I'm like, I'm so nervous to have this bad conversation. I'm just going to roll.
So we just get in there and then we just fly by the seat of our pants, and that's never a good thing. Okay. So plan it out. Write down your bullet items. Always ask yourself this: what do I want them to hear? And then plan your conversation based on that. What do you want them to hear? What do you want them to be the takeaway of this conversation? Okay. And plan it out. Practice it for yourself in the mirror, in your car, wherever it is. Yeah. Practice conversations. The more you practice, the better your performance will be. And a conversation is a performance.
Yeah.
It's just a performance for one person, but it is a performance. So think about it, plan it out.
Okay.
And then the last step is when you're in it, make sure you're expressing yourself without expressing them. And what I mean by that is within that conversation, express yourself, use your emotions, use your tone of voice, all of the things. But don't pretend to be able to express for them. Allow them to be in that conversation and just be present with it. allow them to be themselves, allow them to have the reactions they have, and adapt as you go.
Okay.
But don't put on them the things you already think are going to happen, right? Oh, I already know he's going to disagree with me. He always disagrees with me.
Mm-hmm,
Why don't you wait and get into the space and see if he disagrees with you? Then you can handle it if he does. But maybe this is the one day he doesn't disagree with you. So why don't we go in only worrying about our own expression and not putting any expectations or expression on other people? So if you assess, you plan, and you express, you will have a better conversation, whether it's difficult or not.
Oh my goodness. You are all about strategy, technique, like going in with a game plan. I mean, I feel like this was just a mini masterclass that people can get like the tip of the iceberg, just a little teeny piece of what it is that you fully teach. And I know we were going to link resources to get in contact with you. If anyone is listening and just like, gosh, how do we get more of this? Or can I ask you questions? Where can people find you, Stevie? How can people connect with you after this podcast?
Absolutely. So the easiest way to find out about all of our programs, and we do free webinars every month with new trainings, all that kind of stuff. You can find all of that at empathix.net, EMPATHIX.net. And then if you want to just connect with me, I hang out for the most part on LinkedIn. I'm that person. So I answer all my messages. I accept connection requests. So join me on LinkedIn, reach out if you have questions. I'm always happy to help.
Oh my gosh, guys, you heard it from Dr. Stevie, is that she is accessible, thankfully, because I have follow-up questions. You know, this was just barely the highlighted level. And I just keep going back to all of us. You know, I know that this subject applies to every single person listening. We all want to grow deeper, stronger, more meaningful relationships in all areas of our lives. And this is the roadmap to just doing that. So I am so thankful, Stevie, for your time today. You've changed my life in this short conversation. I'm not kidding you. I mean, this is so great. Thank you again. We know how to connect with you after this. And I just want to stay in touch with you. You're brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity and the great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Talk to you soon.